Welcome to the Overcommitted podcast, your weekly dose of real engineering conversations. I'm your host, Brittany, and this is a podcast where a group of some of my friends and I met working on a team at GitHub, realized we were all obsessed with getting better at what we do, and we decided to start this podcast to share what we are learning. We talk about everything from leveling up your technical skills to navigating your professional development, all with the goal of creating a community where engineers can learn and connect. Today on Overcommitted, I'm so excited because we are joined by Dave Schwantes, a senior software engineer at GitHub with a career spanning companies like Instacart and Couchsurfing International. He has been deeply involved in engineering mentorship, creating an in-house coding bootcamp that helps non-technical employees transition into engineering roles at Instacart without quitting their jobs or paying for outside education. In addition, Dave also helps co-lead the engineering mentorship program at GitHub with me. So very excited to have him here today. He brings a rare combination of hands-on engineering experience, deep mentorship roots, and a grounded, honest perspective on what career happiness in software actually looks like across different life stages. And he's also a heck of a musician and is in a ska band.
Yeah.
Hello, Dave. Welcome.
Hey, really cool to be here. Been excited to be on your podcast since I learned you had one.
I know. Yeah, I think you actually had told me that you did a podcast previously, and that was part of what I was like, oh, maybe I could do that at some point, because we have been on a team together at GitHub, or adjacent teams, I guess, and we were on a team together on the Web Dev Challenge, which I'll link for sure in the show notes. So
We've made some cool stuff.
Yeah. So to kick us off, what's one thing you're currently building or obsessed with learning right now?
Let's see. So I've been trying to play around with AI tools like every other software engineer in the world, and I have this ongoing list of project ideas. I've been keeping a Google Doc of these things for 20 years, and I've been going through and trying to chip off ones that seemed a little too hard to do, or I couldn't justify the time to do them. So I've been going through and just tossing them in Copilot or tossing them in Claude or something like that. So I built a messaging app for my kid. I couldn't find any text messaging app I liked for them, and I was tired of him asking me to text his friend's mom to hang out. So I built him and his friends a messaging app. I built a little thing that let me train a machine learning model to detect squirrels on my bird feeder and then play metals super loud to try to scare them away. That's been really good. Built something to try to organize the songwriting for one of my bands because we just kept sending music files back and forth in text threads and I couldn't find it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm chipping away at a bunch of little projects that I couldn't justify the time for before.
That's amazing and such a great idea to build something. As a parent, my kids are still young enough to where they're not wanting to message other people yet. But the idea of parental controls on software out there is very intimidating to me as a software engineer because I'm like, they're probably not amazing.
Yeah.
So building one yourself, that's such a good idea. I love that. How do your neighbors feel about the squirrel vendetta you have?
Nobody's asked me about it yet, but every once in a while there'll be a 15-second clip of Slayer or something like that playing super loud in the backyard. The problem is the squirrels don't actually hate death metal. They're kind of into it.
They're rocking out.
Yeah, so now I'm on a quest to build some Arduino thing that'll jump scare them. I don't know. It's going to be a weird obsession. So I'm deep down that rabbit hole now.
You got to find the right music that the squirrels really hate, I guess.
Yeah.
They've been hanging around your house long enough that they're used to too much music.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So first I wanted to talk a little bit about how you got to where you are in your career and how things sort of connected for you. So you're at GitHub now and worked previously, I think, at Instacart. And what is the thread that connects your experience all together, do you think?
So I've never been really good at having here's my 5-year plan, here's my 10-year plan. I've always kind of liked checking in, am I happy here? Am I directionally happy more than do I have a great destination? And I guess kind of looking back at a lot of the companies I worked for, I've tried to work for places where I like what they make, or I thought I would use what they make, or I could relate to what they make in some way. And I guess my first job was, I don't know, a high school buddy of mine was working at a company and asked me to apply there. So I worked there for a while. So I guess that wasn't too ideologically motivated other than I was in my 20s and needed a job. But like from there, I kind of felt like I at least tried to pick stuff that was on my mind. I think when I was living in California, the first like startup-y job I worked at was in solar energy. It was software for solar systems. Um, and my wife was in grad school at the time, studying energy policy. So I'd been talking to her about that stuff a lot. So I'm like, oh yeah, solar could be cool. And then I was into travel, so couch surfing was cool. And I was sick of going to the grocery store, so Instacart seemed cool. I write software, so here I'm at GitHub. Um, so I like to be able to relate to what I'm doing. I have a harder time just kind of getting excited about a company that does something that probably helps a lot of people, but I need some of those people to be me. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It's a very different experience working on a product that is where you're like one of the number one,
Yeah.
customer archetypes for it, for sure. How did you know at each transition that it was time to move on? Was there something that, and it might have been different for each one, I guess,
Yeah.
but like, how do you make that decision?
I think in general, I try really hard not to move away from things, but move toward things. Like, my last job at Instacart, like I had a lot of fun at Instacart, met a lot of cool people, learned a lot of cool stuff. I didn't really want to leave anything at Instacart, but I kind of knew that there were other things out there, other software companies at that size. And I felt like I knew how Instacart made software, and I wanted to go somewhere else and kind of see what was universal, what was unique to different companies. And so I think it was the push of seeing what else is out there. But I think that's going to be a different pull at different points in my life. Earlier on, I think I was more inclined to jump to see more different things, whereas now I might be more interested in trying to go deeper in what companies offer. And I think that's just, change in attitude, change in lifestyle, that sort of thing.
That makes sense. And I know, having worked with you and been a part of some mentorship related presentations with you, that happiness is an important factor to you doing your job. And,
Mhm.
it's part of the recommendations that you give other people as well. Is this something that you have come to find over time, or is this something that you've just like a core value you've had throughout your entire career, or
I
what's that?
think as I was working, I noticed people that didn't seem happy. They might have been successful. They might have even been doing things that I kind of envied or even aspired to, but they didn't seem to really be enjoying themselves that much. And I think it kind of came down to figuring out that you have to understand what you want in order to kind of have that holistic happiness and recognize that that's something that's going to change. What's going to make you happy at 20 is going to be different at 30, 40, 50, whatever. Like, you're going to change your perspective, your life is going to be different. And I think if you don't think deeply about what you really want, what you value, and recognize that that can change, you can end up chasing things that look good, might have their benefits, might make you money, might get you prestige, but they're not going to be fulfilling. You can run yourself into a career that you don't really like. And I think that's a risk. And I think being software engineers, we have optionality. We have some choice around this stuff. So I think you do yourself a pretty big disservice to not take that frequent time to reflect, like, what do I want? What's really motivating me? How does work fit in with everything else?
Yeah, I like that. Especially, I think I'm at a point in my career where I've sort of gone through like the beginning and like gotten to like the mid-level part where it's just going to be, is this just going to be a trudge until I get close to retirement?
Mhm.
And starting to realize that, yeah, like that happiness and those things that I wanted early on are probably different than they are now. And
Yeah.
so yeah,
Like,
that's very
an
interesting.
engineer I really, really respected, really liked, worked at, my previous company. She was phenomenal. Like, if she had wanted, I think she could have, shot up staff plus, all that really easily. She was definitely a, like, career senior engineer, but, like, kept switching teams and switching areas of the company. She'd been doing application stuff, went and did infrastructure stuff. Like, she built up enough reputation that, she was able to move laterally a lot, and I think she's had a career she really likes because I think she knows what direction she wants to move in. Like, I always thought about that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Has your personal definition of happiness and like what a good career is, has that changed over time? Have you seen that? Have your own goals changed?
Yeah, I think so. I think early on career, learning is incredibly important, and learning is always important, but, like, learning, exposure to new things, like, even jumping around company to company was a lot more appealing. There was this idea of breadth of exposure, and also the idea of, "Hey, this is a good time to go super hard on stuff professionally." And I think as I've gotten older, seeing how work can kind of fit into the rest of my life. I think work-life balance is a little bit of an overloaded term, but I mean, a big part of my career happiness is how my job fits in with the rest of my life, whether that's family, friends, interests, stuff like that. And sort of recognizing that there are things right now in my life that are unique, and if I miss them for work things, I can't get those back. And just recognizing that it's great to love your job and to be really into your job and care about it and put a lot of yourself into it, but it is it is an exchange. The company's paying you money for work, and it can be a really mutually beneficial exchange and something where both sides are really happy, but it's still that part of the exchange. And I don't want to overcorrect to that at this point in my life uh, at the cost of some, I don't know, things with my kids, things where I'm keeping my own sanity, stuff like that. I think it can be really easy to let let external things pull your time. Work is a perfect example of it. Will ask as much as uh, from you as you're willing to give it. And so I think for right now, my happiness has come a lot from putting the appropriate boundaries on different things. So it all fits together in a way that creates you know, a happiness for me. And that's going to be different for different people. Like different people are going to decide like, hey, I want to go super hard on work right now. I want to go super deep into this stuff. And like, that's great, but it has to be a conscious choice. And I think for me, I've tried really hard to make those conscious choices. And to your point, it has evolved. I think it was like a Paul Graham tweet or something that like struck me. It was just, he said, uh, I realized I've become less ambitious since I've had kids. And that was kind of like a shocking thing. I'm like, huh, there is a little bit of that, but that's a narrow quote, right? It's not that you've become less ambitious. It's just that maybe your ambitions have you know, broadened, right? And for not everybody, that's going to be kids. For me, I've got kids, so that's some of it. But like your ambitions can broaden. I think keeping work and life in these like narrow buckets and pretending they don't affect each other doesn't really work.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Especially, yeah, being also in a phase of my life where my kids are young and
Mhm.
very heavily involved with them and like not willing to give up on certain things that
Yeah.
otherwise you would miss them. So,
I always think eventually my kids aren't going to want to hang out with me. They want to hang out now. Work's
mhm.
always going to want to hang out.
Yeah, that's true. You got to enjoy it while you can, really. So, let's talk a little bit about mentorship. I know this is something that is pretty important to you.
Yeah.
Like I said, we do a lot of stuff related to mentorship at GitHub together.
Mhm.
I'm curious, like how that became important to you. Like, how have you approached mentorship within your career, and like why is that something that you ended up caring about a lot at GitHub?
So I don't know if there was a like particular inflection point in my career where I'm like, oh, this is going to be my thing. When I was in college, I had an internship. I think that really helped me like get into the working world and helped me a ton. So when I started to be around the senior level and started feeling like I had a little bit more leverage at companies, I got excited about like trying to do college recruiting, trying to encourage us to build mentorship programs, internship programs, things like that. And then that just got coupled with I just got a lot of satisfaction about around helping other people grow. That ended up being a thing that I noticed at the end of the day when I came home. I'm like, and I had helped somebody else with something, helped somebody level up, like that felt like a good day. So just making a mental note of that, like I dug into that a little bit more. And I think as you become more senior, it's important to find the ways you have the most leverage. That's what seniority in software engineering is. It's having leverage. And for some people, that's going to be being really deeply technical, maybe doing deep architecture things, doing kind of cross company communication. But I think making other people around you better is an incredibly powerful piece of leverage. And so I think as I figured out what it meant for me to be a senior engineer, that was the aspect of leverage that kind of called to me the most is taking what I know and making other people around me better. So I kind of dug into that, and it's been really fun to watch people grow, watch people learn things. You kind of build these relationships and send people off, and it's kind of cool to see where they're at. You had mentioned the boot camp thing that I had helped build at Instacart. I still go back and like check the LinkedIn of people who are in that, and like, that's cool. This guy is, a senior software engineer too somewhere, and we worked together when he was figuring out basic Ruby syntax. Like, that's cool that I kind of helped push somebody in a direction. So yeah, I think it was just this really satisfying feeling of you can kind of help direct people's lives, help people like make these big career changes or grow in their career in a way that really makes a difference. And I think a big part of the mentoring, I like doing the technical stuff, like helping people, all that, but I also like talking about all the squishy skills that come with this job. I think a lot of us get into this because we like the rigid technicality of code and of working with computers, but I think when people realize that it's not enough to just do that, you also have to have the interpersonal stuff, the awareness of your organization, and like we just talked about, the awareness of yourself to know that you're doing what's going to ultimately serve you. I think those are really fun conversations to have with people at every stage of their career.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that a lot. Um, and it sounds like so you've mentored folks that were, career changers getting into tech as well as, all the way up to, you know, I'm assuming folks that are early in career, mid-career, etc. And I know
Yeah.
you've worked as a manager at one point as well,
Yes, which
correct? Okay, so
I
that's
highly recommend to people. It is a great skill to have. I never thought I was great talking in meetings or like, earlier in my career when I had a meeting, it was always a little bit of like, oh my God, that's throwing off my day. I'm going to have to get up and talk to people. And then it was my job to talk to people all day, every day for like 4 years. And now it's way easier.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a canonical paper that everybody always recommends about like the engineer or the manager IC pendulum
Yeah.
that yeah, about how like actually going back and forth between those things really makes you a better engineer and a better manager
Yeah.
in a lot of
Like,
ways.
you gain a lot of sympathy for the decisions managers have to make. You understand how organizational decisions are made a lot better, and I think bringing that back to being an IC is a
Mhm.
really useful skill.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Is there anybody that you've like have you done any of the, I'm getting into tech mentoring recently? Because I think that the world has changed a lot
Yeah.
since when you were working at Instacart doing that. Is that still a thing that you're plugged into at all?
Let's
Or
see. I haven't seen a lot of people who are trying to do the, like, boot camp change thing. Like,
Mhm,
10 years ago, that was a lot. There were a lot of people who are like,
mhm.
"Oh, look at this great career path. You can go to school for 12 weeks and, make a ton of money and be as happy as everybody else in San Francisco is." I see less of that. I have had a mentee through GitHub's mentorship program a while ago who was pretty early career, and I think they were struggling a little bit with, is this for them? Um, I think those are fun conversations. I mean, maybe not fun, but like they're interesting conversations. Uh, like I really appreciated the honesty of somebody coming in and saying like, I'm not sure if this is for me. Um, so I don't know. I like that. And we talked a lot about checking in. Like, do you like what you were doing? Uh, Try not to run from something, like run to something. Um, try to dissect what you like and what you don't like, because software engineer is a broad title. I just think about like, if this were construction, we'd use the same title for somebody who does carpentry and somebody who does architecture and somebody who does, metals, like materials research to come up with stronger I-beams. Like there's a lot of stuff to do under this job title. So I don't know. Yeah, I do think it is a little different today than it was, 10, 15 years ago. So I think those are definitely conversations worth having, especially early in career.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I find myself drawn to mentoring other women in tech because I had some really strong, women that were
Oh, that's cool.
very senior that I looked up to early in my career that really like just having somebody to talk to and be like, "Oh, look, there's a person who is like similar to me."
Yeah.
Was, it made a huge difference I think in my own career. And I think that there is a lot of conversation. The entirety of Women Who Code, that organization was built
Mhm.
primarily because I think it was like 50% of women like left the industry by the time that they were 35.
Yeah.
Like, it just, so I find that there's a lot of those conversations, I feel like, with the folks that I meet with. They're like, "I don't feel like tech is for me." I'm like, "Really, it is. It can be." Like, just like the traditional path might not be it. So, I like that assessing of, is this the right path? Have you had a mentor then within your career that was, like, very honest with you that, like, got you into this and help you realize, like, "Oh, this is a really great way to meet with folks?"
I don't know if I've had as many, like, formal mentors to do that. I've had leadership that's been really supportive in letting me build stuff that I was interested in building, letting me kind of run with things that I was interested in. I think that's been really helpful. I've had, I guess, sometimes managers, sometimes, like, much more senior coworkers that have kind of fallen on different parts of the spectrum of I think it's really good to have people that you can just bring half-baked, kind of nutso ideas to and feel really safe being like, "Hey, I've got this weird idea. I haven't thought this through. Just be a sounding board, like do that." And then on the other end of the spectrum, people that if you come up with a half-assed idea and you haven't anticipated their questions, they're going to maybe not be mean, but they're gonna like you're gonna get a sense you're wasting their time. And I've liked having both of those people in my life. Like, it's good to have a lot of psychological safety to, like, play around with things, but it was also good to toughen me up and, like, teach me to anticipate questions, teach me to, like, really form my thoughts and come up with, not rely on other people to do all of the back and forth on things and get me to solid ideas faster. By having that, I don't know if I would call it a lack of safety, but certainly a more, pressure to come with fully thought out ideas. People who have a little less patience for the chit chat about um, squishy ideas. So I
Mhm.
think both of those have been really helpful in kind of in my growth and figuring out how to like pick paths, pick things that are really that I care enough about diving into.
Yeah. I think one thing that I've noticed recently is that a lot of folks are using AI tools like, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, like
Mhm.
the chat ones where you could just ask a million questions to
Mhm.
over and over and over. And, they never get tired
Right.
of those questions and are very polite when they respond,
Yeah.
that many times. And I feel like there's been some discourse online that I've seen around like, are people talking to their coworkers less because they can use these tools to get a
Yeah.
lot of the answers that they have about things? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, if you have any at
Oh,
all.
yeah. No, I've definitely been thinking about that a lot because this is a little bit of almost reminiscent of, early on when maybe tech was meaner and you'd ask a question, people would tell you to RTFM, right? The answer's out
Mhm.
there. Go look at the documentation. And yes, that's good advice, but it kind of misses what I think a lot of people are looking for when they reached out to people is not just the answer, but the human connection. And at a fundamental, like humans should be talking to other humans. That seems like a fundamental positive thing, but also like you build relationships, you build communication skills. Like it's important to talk to your coworkers to get answers, not just because that's a great way to get answers or the only way to get answers, because clearly we can get answers other ways now, but it builds that rapport, it builds that trust. It like lets you know who to talk to about other things. So I think if you're just talking to chatbots to get answers, you're looking at question answering in too utilitarian of a way, and you're going to miss the softer, harder to measure benefits of conversations.
Yeah, I'm really curious how that's going to change over time because I find that myself too. I'm like, man, I'm not doing nearly as much pair programming as I
Mhm.
used to because I think it's just not as necessary to work through problems anymore. But it's still, I mean, I learned a lot from pair programming with other people, even if I wasn't the one driving, because I got to
Yeah.
see, like, oh, especially working remote, like, oh, okay, this is how they approach this problem, or these are the tools they know about that I didn't know
Yeah,
about.
you pick up tools, you
You
pick
know,
up keyboard shortcuts, like all that the stuff that's not important. You're never gonna ask that question,
hmm
but you're gonna get stuff incidentally. And
yeah,
honestly, it seems like it's probably gonna produce a gap between people who would have gotten that benefit just incidentally by talking to people, and now they're not going to because 'cause they're never going to think to do that because they can get their answers somewhere else, and people who are going to recognize that and then make the effort to interact with other people because they know they're missing that. And I think that's kind of the challenge. Whenever you lose out on some incidental benefit, you now run the risk of having this divide between people who aren't going to proactively seek it and people who are going to recognize it and carve out the time and extra activation energy to seek it out.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And this might be just me reading into this because I know this is something that we're both deeply involved in, but I wonder if formal mentorship programs are going to be more important to like, there's a reason to talk to
Yeah.
people at least because like you're paired together, like you got to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I think that's something that can fill that void is instead of incidentally talking to people, you might have to make it a little bit more formal of a thing, or at least make it formal to get the ball rolling on things, to get people used to that being a thing that you have to do now that, you know, you can ask somebody without asking somebody.
That makes sense. So, what does switching gears a little bit? What does career happiness look like for you right now? Is it like the work you're doing, the team you're on, the craft or learning about AI? Like, what is it
Yeah.
that is bringing you happiness?
I think, let's see. I think career happiness is kind of a limiting term. I don't think you can have career happiness without considering other parts of your life. So, not to completely avoid the question, because I think when looking at how the career aspects of your life affect your happiness, yeah, I think for me right now, it's working on stuff that I think should exist. I think if I were, I don't know, putting ads in mobile games or something like that, I think I'd have a harder time, you know, Mondays would be harder, right? Um, I think it's working with technologies that I don't find frustrating. You know, in general, I like the languages, I like the stack we're doing, things like that. It's the people I work with. I think you can work on a boring problem with fun people and have way more fun than working on a fun problem with terrible people. So I think that's a big part of it. Am I learning stuff? Am I growing? Do I feel like at the end of the day, I've either done something that wasn't done in the morning? I know something that I didn't know yesterday. Those are good things to do. As I get further and further in my career, recognizing that the turnaround cycle on that stuff is going to be a little longer. I think earlier in career, you might get smaller issues to work on. And, at the end of the day, you've closed 3 tickets and that feels great. Being a little bit more senior, you might have longer satisfaction cycles. It might be pound your head against, a bunch of SQL queries to try to figure out how the system really should work and whether or not this data is clean. And you might end the day a little frustrated. This might be what I'm doing right now. But, at the end of the week,
Sounds like
the
a
end of the
personal
month,
story.
whatever, like, cool. Like, there's now an understanding of this system that maybe nobody in the company had before. That feels pretty good. And then I think going back to what I was originally saying when it sounded like I was trying to dodge the question of career happiness, it's how does all of that fit in my life in a way that feels balanced for what I want right now? Like I talked about earlier, I think if I couldn't, I don't know, go to my kid's soccer game or something like that because work was so all encompassing, for me, that would be a problem right now. That's not going to be true for everybody. I think there's some people are like, hey, I'm going hard on this. I've got a career progression I'm into, a company I'm building, things like that. And there's going to be sacrifices. For me, it's knowing what I'm willing to push back on in every direction and making sure that the work I'm doing uh, is accommodating to that. The people I'm working with, working for, are accommodating to that, and that it all fits in a life that is ultimately where I want to be right now.
I love that. Okay. Well, in the interest of time, I think we're going to wrap up because I think that you just answered all of the questions that I had
Perfect.
related to
Yeah.
the last segment there. So that's great. So at the end of every one of our shows, we do a fun segment. At least we think it's fun. We have never we're almost a year into this podcast and still have not come up with a good name for it. But this we do a different one for every guest that we have on. And what we're going to do is a round robin with just 2 of us. So maybe we'll both go twice. But we each get a scenario, an engineer at a career crossroads, and we give our most honest advice that we can for
Okay.
somebody at this point in their career. Yeah. So we'll see how this goes. Great. So we're gonna call this "What would you tell them?" So the
Okay.
first one, you can go first if you'd like.
Sure.
So this is an engineer who is 3 years into their career that just got passed over for promotion, and is wondering if they should go back to school for an advanced degree.
Okay. As somebody who did go back to school for an advanced degree, I would say do it if you're actually interested in the degree and you've got the financial means to do it without putting yourself in a hole. Don't do it because you think you're going to get a promotion or a raise. You will never pay for a master's by promotions. I don't know, for better or worse. Like our industry doesn't care that much. You can learn lots of good stuff. You can bring that and it can be valuable, but the degree itself is not going to necessarily help you out.
Valid. Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, like having the extra 2 to 4 years of experience that you might get by
Mhm.
getting out of school and getting the degree might be valued even more than the degree
Yeah.
itself.
I mean, grad school's
Um,
fun, but
yeah,
don't go there like it's not going to get you the promotion.
makes sense. Absolutely. All right. So the next one, I guess I'll take this one. A mid-career engineer who keeps getting told they should go into management but doesn't want to and is starting to feel guilty about it. I actually used AI to come up with these and didn't read them too much in advance, in part to do this. And this is hilarious because I am a an engineer
Yeah.
who gets told often to go into management but doesn't want to. This is definitely not a thing to feel guilty about. I think that particularly I've noticed a lot of women in their career end up getting pushed into management. I think a lot of it has to come with, like the women are often very like empathetic and like very
Mhm.
good at like, listening and taking into account, you typically have high emotional intelligence,
I have
not
not had a male
comparatively,
manager
but
since I've worked at GitHub.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of women get pushed into management, whether or not they want to. And then I think a
Mhm.
lot of men typically get pushed towards like the more senior IC role. But it's a very different job.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a very different skill set
Yeah. Like
than
manager isn't just the
engineering.
promotion from senior engineer. It is
Mm-mm.
very different.
Yeah, and at GitHub even it's a lateral move. It's not even like a promotion. You go from engineer to manager and it's the
Yeah.
same level.
I've
So,
seen that a lot
yeah.
of companies, and I really do appreciate that they are parallel career paths.
Yeah. So I would say don't feel guilty about it. And, if I think like if to parrot Dave here, I
Mhm.
would say optimize for happiness and what brings you joy within your career. If you love mentoring people and love seeing them grow, then
Yeah.
maybe a manager role is for you. But you can also be an engineer and be a really great mentor. And I think that
Yes.
that's another path. Um,
I
all
would
right.
say as a s like, in seniority, if you feel like there's a good pendulum at your company, it's worth considering even if you don't think you'll like it, because I think even if you don't like it, you'll learn a lot about stuff.
Mhm.
Like, as somebody who's pendulumed, like, there were things I really didn't like about it, and that has shaped the things I choose to engage in.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. My last role was manager for like the last year of it, but I was like a tech lead manager. It was a very
Yeah.
small company. So you kind of just wore all of the hats.
Yeah.
Um and I do agree. I think that there's a lot to be gained from like really trying to put yourself in a position where you're trying to help another person grow in their career.
Mhm.
Um as a mentor, you're not necessarily as like tied to the outcomes as you
Yeah.
are as a manager. So yeah, yeah, it's interesting. All right. Next one for you. The career changer who is 2 months into a coding boot camp, but is struggling and doesn't want to quit because they've already told everyone they're making the switch.
I don't know, like, 2 months is a pretty short amount of time compared to the amount of time you'll spend in a miserable career. Coding doesn't have to be for everyone, right? It's
Mhm.
okay. It's a cool job. I like it, but that doesn't mean everybody's gonna be happy doing it. I think it's worth giving it a try. It's worth getting deeper into it if you have a good reason to keep pushing on it. But I don't know, you're gonna be way less happy working a career that doesn't resonate with you and you show up and you're miserable than if you have to tell people, "Oops, I changed my mind," right? I think that sunk cost fallacy is pretty weak, especially at the 2-month mark. I don't know.
Mhm.
I just talked to somebody who was a staff engineer who left and is doesn't really want to touch technology anymore. Um, People can decide, software is not for them whenever they want.
Yeah, and I think that's actually pretty common. I feel like I've meet fewer people that have been in the industry for, 35 years or something,
Mhm.
always doing engineering. There's not those are unicorns out
Yeah.
there and usually find themselves in some sort of leadership role anyway, even if that's not
Yeah.
what they specifically like set out to do. Yeah, I agree. Um, all right, last one. Senior engineer who is technically excellent but quietly miserable. Great compensation, respected team, nothing wrong, but dreads Monday mornings.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think my advice in this case would be you gotta probably make a change because it's not great being miserable.
Yeah. And I think it's tricky to figure out what change to make. I felt
Mhm.
like, especially when I was living in the Bay Area, there was this trope of, software engineers would go hard, burn out, and they'd there were a lot of yoga instructors, coffee roasters, like, there was this whole, like, genre of jobs that were for burnt out tech people. And that always struck me as maybe it's a profoundly American extreme thing. We can only lunge from our extremes of burnout to complete abstinence from whatever was hurting you. But I think if you're feeling that burnout, that like, I don't want to do this on Monday, you have to almost the easy path out is screw this, I'm going to go teach yoga, right? I think the harder path is figuring out like, what do I hate? What do I like? Is there anything salvageable from this? How does this job fit into an overall lifestyle that I like? Like if the job enables a lifestyle you like and there are ways to do it in a way that doesn't grind on your soul, you know, that's a worthwhile path. If you're done with it and you want to teach yoga, teach yoga. That's cool. But it's worth giving it a little bit of deep thought that doesn't just lunge between extremes.
I love that. Yeah, I feel a little personally attacked because yoga instructor is my backup career,
Yeah.
when I'm done with software engineering. But I think there's also I mean, I think people should also embrace, like, the idea of working part-time too. Like, do you have
Yes.
a lot of companies GitHub offers, flexible working arrangements where you can work part-time.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of companies do. Like, you could just do less work and do
Yeah.
more of the things that you really enjoy and maybe be happier. And I know that a lot of people that take that route too. So, yeah, needs more information, I think.
Yeah. And I think to your point on kind of non-traditional setups, like I think a lot of people are afraid to one, figure out what they want and then ask for it. Like, what's the
Mhm,
worst that can happen? Somebody says, no, you can't work 4 days a week. All right, you tried, but now you've learned information. But like some
mhm.
people make it work and, work 4 days a week or work, whatever hours facilitate whatever happiness works for them. Like, I don't know. But you have to do that foundational work of figuring out what you really want, or you're not going to actually be able to find something that makes you happy.
Yeah, very true. Well, thank you. That was fun.
Yeah.
Good example of a few different paths that folks find themselves on. Dave, thank you so much for joining us. Where can folks find you if they want to find you on the internet?
Let's see. So I have a website, dinosaurseateverbody.com. That's just my personal site with a few blog posts and random stuff about me. I do have a site called Don't Break Prod, which is tiny pieces of tech career advice. And then I've been posting a little bit on Blue Sky lately.
Awesome. We'll definitely include all of those links to the show notes. And I can't sign off too without saying that you need to plug your band.
Oh yeah, uh, yeah.
Where can folks find your band?
Yes, I do have. I have a spooky ska band called Grave Danger. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you might find your music. And we should have a
Incredible.
record out this October.
I can't wait. October even. Yeah, it's like the best like Halloween theme.
Oh, that's our thing. We always put out a record on Halloween. I've never released a
Love it.
record for that band on any other day.
Ugh, love it so much.
I love doing album announcements on a tech podcast. That's perfect.
Yes. Well, I mean, everybody has their parallel life that they're leading. It sounds like music is your backup if,
Yeah,
once you're
that's my
finally
backup.
done with tech.
That's my yoga
Yep.
instructor.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to Overcommitted. If you like what you hear, please do follow, subscribe, or do whatever it is you do on the podcast app of your choice because they're all different. Check us out on Blue Sky and share with your friends. Until next week, goodbye.
See ya.